So for today's lecture, I think we have some very interesting topic. We will talk a little bit more about a warm-up. This is a standard procedure that is here with us within exercise for over the century, but I call this lecture the warm-up and update, and you will see why this is the topic. So when we are discussing the warm-up, we can say that this is one of the essential part of every training session. In whichever sport that you are involved, it is of great importance to have this introductory part of training that is called the warm-up. And for a century or more, we have some warm-up procedures. Generally, traditionally, warm-up procedures consisted of some couple of minutes of some large muscle group activation, running or skating or rowing or whatever. So to increase the level of temperature of the body. For a couple of minutes we had traditionally we had some static stretching, and after that we have a couple of minutes, 5 to 7 minutes of sport-specific warm-up. And that was, I don't know, for several decades until early 2000, we have this, let's say, old structure of the warm-up. But at the end of the 20th century, some new study findings revealed one very interesting idea, that maybe when you have a static stretching just before doing something else, or during the warm-up procedure, it seems that you can, because of this static stretching, that you can decrease parameters of strength and power for even as long as 45 minutes after this static stretching. And when those articles arrived, scientific articles arrived, a couple of years later, when we had a bigger knowledge about this special issue that leads specifically to the changes of warm-up procedures. So at the start of 21st century, we had a new warm-up procedure that generally consisted of a couple of minutes of jogging, of course, as we did in previous times. Then we switched from static stretching to dynamic stretching, because it seems that dynamic stretching can increase the level of flexibility, but do not decrease the parameters of power. And after that, we continue with sport-specific stretching. And basically, this was the standard, let's say, new procedures for 10 or 15 years during the 21st century. But then again, maybe 10 years ago, there was another trend. There is another trend that is still more or less active. I didn't include Jan Jeffries' ramp protocol here, but it is basically very similar to this one that I will explain right now. So if this previous protocol was a new trend in warm-up procedure, then this, let's say the latest one, we can call the new trend in warm-up procedure. And basically what we can see in this new trend is that we have several stages of warm-up procedures that we never had before. So this new trend in new protocol of warm-up consisted of foam rolling. This is the first part of warm-up. Then active, isolated, static stretching. Again, static. We will discuss a little bit why. Then glute activation, some strange new idea, but we will explain it. And then dynamic warm-up that we already know. And movement preparation plus neural activation. And then we finish with sport-specific warm-up. So this is somewhat improved, this new trend of warm-up procedures. And let's discuss some of the aspects of each stage. So what we saw is that foam rolling is the first stage of the warm-up. What about foam rolling? This knowledge came from physical therapy, basically. So it is self-massage. It seems that after after some previous training session, we can have some issues in our body, mostly related to muscle fascia. And if muscle fascia is not back to normal, let's say, maybe we can have decreased proprioception level and decreased generally neuromotor skills. So from physical therapy, we know that maybe we can have some treatment for muscle fascia, but we need a masseurist to do that. And if we don't have enough money to include masseurist or some special person, then maybe we can self-roll ourselves with a foam rolling and similar devices. So basically, the general idea is, before we start to warm up, to do some foam rolling procedures for specific muscle groups in order to attenuate some deficiencies that we still have after the previous training sessions. There are a lot of theory considering muscle fascia. We are not sure if we can change structure of muscle fascia itself as a consequence of foam rolling. Most likely not. But recent articles proved that there are some benefits of foam rolling, mostly related to increasing the range of motion and increasing the temperature without producing negative effects of static stretching. We will not discuss this in details, just to know specific issues. So something like this, yeah, we can foam roll for several minutes and prepare specific muscle groups. After the foam rolling, we have active isolated static stretching. How come that we have static stretching again? When we discussed that static stretching can hamper the power development. With continuation of the research that were directed to static stretching, we gain even some more knowledge. So it is true that after the static stretching, but we must say severe static stretching, there are some deficiencies for 30-45 minutes considering power parameters. But what additional scientific publications showed us is that even if you do static stretching, regular static stretching during the warm-up, if after this static stretching we have some activation drills, some, let's say, small muscle group strength drills during the warm-up, some potentiation drills, those drills are so powerful that they alleviate those deficiencies obtained with static stretching. So it seems that we can do static stretching if after that we will do something else. And why static stretching before and not after the practice? Well, this is the rationale. If you stretch the muscle when the muscle is cold, then those deformations that you gain are going to be smaller in magnitude but more continuous in prolonged period of time. So it makes sense that you stretch your muscles before you warm up generally your body. So after this active isolated static stretching, there is a third part of warm-up. We call it the glute activation, and I will give you the short rationale why maybe it's a good idea to activate your glute muscles. First of all, glute region is consisted of three specific muscle groups. One very big, gluteus maximus, most likely the most important muscle in our body, and two smaller, gluteus medius and gluteus minimus, which are functionally operating as one muscle group. So basically, when we are considering movement patterns, we have two muscle groups, gluteus maximus and gluteus medius plus gluteus minimus. Gluteus maximus is a well-known muscle. We like it for a number of reasons, yeah, of course, but considering sport activities, the gluteus maximus is the major muscle producing force during running and jumping abilities. So the main function of gluteus maximus is a hip extension. And we run with hip extension and we jump with hip extension. So if we must pick one muscle group that is most important generally in sport activities, we could easily say that this is gluteus maximus. So isometrically, gluteus maximus very important muscle to stabilize the knee with through iliotibial band. Gluteus medius and minimus are also very important, and they most likely are the most responsible for controlling the knee not to get into the knee valgus position. So if you have good gluteus medius and minimus muscle, there is significantly less chance that you will have knee valgus position during dynamic or static movement patterns. So why this is important? This is important because one very famous physical therapist from Czech Republic called Vladimir Janda, 40 years ago, he said that based on his personal everyday experience in doing practical session with his clients, he said, I don't know why, basically he said, I don't know why, but everybody that comes with some issue of the lower part of the body, something happened with the ankle, with the knee, or with the hip, or with some muscle, as a consequence they have glutamnesia. They cannot, they have inhibition of gluteus maximus muscles. And later he discussed a little bit more about this hypothesis of his, and he said basically there are two main reasons why we cannot activate gluteus maximus and medius and minimus, or the glute region. And he said there are two main reasons. First is mechanical inhibition. We don't use in everyday practice, in everyday living activities, we don't use enough glute region. And this is, you can see those hunters in Africa. They are using hugely gluteus maximus muscles because they need this muscle. This muscle is a turbo injection after a couple of hours of walking and slowly running. When they get tired while chasing the food, they change the running mechanics and they start to use gluteus maximus heavily. So if you want to use gluteus maximus, either you must run for an hour, either you must do power activities that on a regular basis nobody is doing this nowadays. So this is the mechanical reason. And the neural reason why we have glutamnesia is that once you have some issue down in the lower body part, as protective mechanisms, our CNS, our brain, cut off the activation ability of the gluteus region in order not to get injured more seriously. So this, Vladimir Janda said, this is the reason. So both mechanical reasons and neurological reasons why most of the people cannot activate gluteal region enough. And for the athletes, glute region is maybe the most important. So this is the rationale why maybe it's a good idea before starting practice session to activate the glute region. Those are the benefits of glute activation. If you have a good glute activation, you will improve the body posture. You will stand better just because you have a better glute activation. You can increase power and strength in many movement patterns, you will see. And if you increase the strength level of glute activation, you decrease the chance of getting injured in other muscle groups. For example, hamstring injury. If you have a strong glutes, it is less likely, statistically less likely, that you will get injured hamstring muscles. So if you have increased the level of strength of the gluteus region, look what happened with the athletes. You accelerate and maximal speed will improve. Explosive strength, agility and quickness will improve. Acceleration and maximal speed in lateral movements will improve. Not only in straight forward, but in lateral also. And maybe the more important, deceleration ability will increase significantly. You know, nowadays in top level basketball, we have two very prominent players, James Harden and Luka Doncic. They are not so physically gifted, but they have one ability that outstands everything else. Their ability to decelerate. So not to accelerate, but decelerate. And this is largely because they have a very good strength level of gluteus region. So in order to be sure that during the regular practice session, our glute region will be activated. Good. Maybe it's a good idea to have glute activation exercise, and this is the third part of warm-up procedure, with lots of drills. Some of them we will show you on a practical session. So maybe it's a good idea to have daily glute activation drills for a couple of minutes as a regular part of the warm-up procedure. After this, we have dynamic warm-up. We know very good what does it mean. Dynamically warm up our body with non-specific or somewhat sport-specific drills. And after this, we have another part of warm-up that we never had before, and this is called the movement preparation drills and neural activation. So basically, what we want to accomplish, we want to rehearse before the general training session. We want to rehearse our general movement patterns, squats, dips, rows, pulls, etc., etc. Because what is the rationale for this part of warm-up? How will you, the general idea is like this, how will you be able to produce high-quality football-specific movement patterns if you cannot do regular everyday movement patterns? So we must rehearse our regular movement patterns in order to improve the quality of sport-specific movement patterns. And after this, there is a neural activation part of warm-up. Basically, it is consisted of activities that are very explosive, couple of seconds in duration, and we want to achieve the maximum neural activation of our central nervous system. Because everything that we did until this neural part of the warm-up, we did for peripheral region of our body. But what generates the movement in our body is central nervous system. So we must prepare also the central nervous system. And when we are finished with this, then only thing that is left before the main part of the training session is to do a sport-specific warm-up. For football players, before the general part of the training session or before the game, they must rehearse the football-specific movement patterns. For basketball player, they must rehearse jumping, shooting ability in order to improve the quality of movement during the general part of training session. So what can we say? That this new warm-up is consisted of several stages that we never had before. Foam rolling, glute activation, movement preparation and neural activation. But it all makes sense. And nowadays, when you look at top-level football players, almost everybody I ever work with, and I work with top-level players, they all do exactly the same like this or very similar warm-up procedures like this. There is one small modification. A very famous professor, Jan Jeffries, presented a ramp protocol a couple of years ago. But basically, it is based on this same principles. So this is the way that nowadays top athletes are preparing for the general part of the session. It is very different than we used to do 20 years ago. It is very different than all the lectures that I have when I was a student and when my professors taught me. But you know, as Socrates said, it's better to change an opinion than to persisting in a wrong one. So I think it's enough for today, and I'm looking forward to try some of these concepts together, and see you next time with some other lecture. Thank you.